It started the night my parents left for their anniversary trip to the coast. I was 17 and had the whole house to myself for 5 days. No curfew, no rules, just me, junk food, and late-night horror movies. Our house wasn't anything special, just a 2-story home on the edge of the woods in upstate New York. Quiet. Too quiet, maybe. By the second night, I began noticing things. First, it was the sound of footsteps on the floor above me. I figured it was just the old house settling. But the sound kept returning, slow, creaking steps pacing from one end of the hall to the other. I call out, thinking maybe my parents had come home early. Silence. I went upstairs. Nothing. All doors shut. Windows locked. No sign of anything wrong. Until I saw the door. It was in the hallway, between my parents' bedroom and the linen closet. A door that had never existed before. Deep red. Wooden, old-fashioned, with iron hinges and a black doorknob that looked cold to the touch. I stood in front of it for 10 minutes, trying to process how a whole door had just appeared in my house. I opened it. Behind the red door was nothing, just a wall, an ordinary plaster wall. I blinked, shut the door, opened it again, still just a wall. I thought I was going crazy, so I called my friend Lila over. She came right away, curious and skeptical. We both stared at the red door in the hallway. "You messing with me?" she asked. "No. Open it." She did, and like before, just a wall. We laughed it off, chalking it up to a weird prank by the builders or maybe something my dad had been working on. Lila went home around midnight. Couldn't sleep. The footsteps started again, only now they were on the stairs. I waited, holding my breath, as the sound came closer and stopped right outside my bedroom door. A soft tap, tap, tap echoed on the wood. Then silence. When I opened the door, no one was there. But the red door at the end of the hall was open. I swear I had closed it earlier. And this time, behind it wasn't a wall. It was a staircase. Stone steps spiraling downward into pitch black. I backed away and shut the door hard. I didn't sleep that night. In the morning, the door was gone. Just blank wall where it had been. But something had changed. The air felt heavy. The lights flickered every few minutes. I found deep scratches under my bed, like someone with long nails had been hiding there. My phone no longer had reception, and there were wet footprints in the hallway. Bare feet, much larger than mine. By the fourth night, the scratching started. From inside my closet. It would begin slow, a single scrape, then another, then faster, until it sounded like something trying to claw its way out. I shoved a chair against the closet and tried not to scream. At 3:33 a.m., the lights died completely. My room went pitch black. I lit a candle and held it close. Then I saw it. On the wall, written in what looked like black ink or blood, were the words, "Don't open the red door." I didn't write it. I had no idea who did. That's when the knocking started. From inside the wall. Rhythmic. Hungry. I ran. I grabbed my keys and bolted out of the house barefoot. I slept in my car that night, parked 2 streets away. When I returned in the morning, everything looked normal. Closet untouched. No scratches. No red door. But then I went to my phone. I had new pictures. Dozens of them. All taken while I slept. Each picture showed me in bed. And someone standing over me. In every photo, it got closer. The last photo was taken just before I woke up. The figure had no face. Just pale, stretched skin and long black fingers. I tried to show my parents when they came home, but the photos were gone. Every single one. They laughed off my story, blamed it on isolation and too many horror movies. They never saw the red door, never heard the footsteps. But I know what I saw, and now every night, no matter where I sleep, I hear a knock. Slow, deliberate, from inside the wall. And I know one day the red door will open again. And this time I might not be the one who closes it. The first strange thing that happened was the smell. An overwhelming scent of roses and rot that seeped into my room around 2 a.m. My parents had left for a business trip in Boston. I was 16, used to being alone, and honestly looked forward to having the house to myself. I stocked up on junk food, queued my favorite shows, and stayed up late gaming. We lived in an old colonial-style house my grandparents had passed down. Creaky floors, narrow halls, and an attic no one ever went into. That first night, I was brushing my teeth when the lights in the hallway flickered. It wasn't unusual. The place had old wiring. But when I stepped out of the bathroom, I saw muddy footprints on the floor, bare feet coming from the stairs, and stopping right outside my bedroom door. I live alone. I thought it had to be me. Maybe I tracked something in earlier. I cleaned them up, locked my bedroom door, and went to sleep. But at exactly 3:08 a.m., I woke to a low, dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across the attic floor, right above me. The attic entrance was directly over my room, a wooden square in the ceiling with a pull-down ladder. I stared at the ceiling for an hour, heart pounding, until I convinced myself it was mice or squirrels. The second night, the dragging returned. Longer this time, slower. I put on headphones and tried to ignore it. At 3:08 a.m., the sound stopped, and I heard a whisper, clear as day, "Don't look up." I froze, tore off my headphones. Silence. But the air in my room had changed thicker, colder. The next morning, I inspected the attic entrance. It was dusty, covered in cobwebs. The rope for the ladder was still tied, untouched. I pushed a chair under it, climbed up, and opened the hatch. I should never have done that. The attic was pitch black. I clicked on my phone light and scanned the space. Empty boxes, old trunks, broken furniture, everything coated in dust and silence. And then I saw her, in the far corner, hunched beneath the eaves. A woman, pale, wearing a torn nightgown, long black hair covering her face. Her limbs bent at impossible angles, like a spider curled inward. She didn't move, didn't breathe. I dropped the hatch and fell off the chair. I scrambled down the stairs, out the front door, and sat on the porch until sunrise. When I finally got the courage to look again the next day, the attic was empty. No footprints, no sign anyone had been there. But that night, she came down. I heard the ladder creak, slow, steady footsteps descending. I had locked my door, barricaded it with a chair, but the handle jiggled. Then the whisper again. "Let me in." I didn't move, didn't breathe. At 3:08 a.m. it stopped. The next morning, the attic ladder was fully extended. Something had walked across my hallway. The footprints were back, this time in ash, not mud. I called my cousin Jackson, the only one who might believe me. He came over that night with sage, salt, and a baseball bat. We waited. At 3:08 a.m., the lights blew out. The house went dark. We heard her on the roof, scratching, crawling, whispering. She didn't try the door that night. She went into my parents' room. We heard the closet creak open. Jackson and I spent the rest of the night outside. The next morning, we checked the closet. There was a hole in the wall, barely wide enough for a person to crawl through, leading to the space between the walls. The smell of roses and rot was stronger than ever. Inside the hole, we found a box. Inside the box, we found newspaper clippings. Young woman found dead in attic, 1949. Body discovered after 10 years missing. Family never returned to home after discovery. Her name was Margaret Alden. She had been pregnant. Her father locked her in the attic when she refused to say who the father was. She died there, forgotten, buried in the walls. My parents never told me. They never mentioned the house's history. But Margaret remembered. She still crawls through the walls, still watches. The last night before my parents came home, I heard her one more time. But this time she wasn't angry. She whispered, "He took everything from me. Don't let him take you. The attic has been nailed shut, the hole in the wall sealed. But every night, at 3:08 a.m., I still hear the dragging. And I don't sleep facing the ceiling anymore. I didn't grow up believing in ghosts. I was a science kid, logic, proof, reality. That was before the week I spent alone in our new house. We had just moved to a quiet suburb in Illinois. My parents had to return to our old city to finish some paperwork and left me behind for 5 days to settle into the new place. I was 17 and stubbornly independent, so I didn't mind. The house was a two-story fixer-upper, old but charming. Lots of creaks, small rooms, a big attic we hadn't opened yet, and a heating system from the 1950s. It started the second night. I was brushing my teeth when I heard it. A voice, quiet, like a whisper traveling through a long tunnel. I froze. Came from the air vent in the bathroom. "Can you hear me?" I leaned closer. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. Maybe it was the wind in the ducts, or the pipes. Then the voice came again. Louder, clearer. "He's watching you." I shut off the lights and ran to my room. That night I kept the lamp on and didn't sleep. The next morning, I told myself I'd imagined it. Maybe I was stressed. Maybe I was overtired. Until I found the note, folded perfectly, tucked under my pillow. The paper was yellowed, edges brittle. In jagged handwriting it read, "Don't use the vents at night. He listens. He comes through." I checked the entire house. Doors locked. Windows shut. I lived alone. The third night, the temperature dropped. I turned on the heater. The air vents groaned. Dust blew through the grates, and with it, a smell like mildew and something rotting. Then the whisper returned. This time a different voice. Deeper. Male. "I see you." I shut off the heater. But the whisper didn't stop. "You're in my house." I dragged my mattress to the living room, slept next to the fireplace. At 2:11 a.m., I woke to the sound of metal creaking, a vent cover twisting open. I sat up slowly. Across the room, behind the TV stand, the living room vent cover was hanging loose. A hand, long, gray-skinned, bony, reached out of the vent, grabbing the floor. I screamed. The hand withdrew. I didn't sleep again. The next morning, I called my parents. They said I was probably just scared of the new place and that the vents were old and noisy. They promised to come home the next day. I went outside and stayed away until sundown. When I returned, there was another note on the kitchen counter. Different handwriting. This one read, "He was locked down there. You turned on the heat. You let him out." I ran to the basement, grabbed the toolbox, and sealed every vent in the house with screws and duct tape. Every single one. That night, the house stayed silent. Until 2:11 a.m. One of the vent covers fell off the ceiling in my room. Not popped. Ripped. The metal frame bent outward like something forced it from inside. That's when I saw it. Two eyes, glowing faint blue in the darkness of the vent shaft, staring at me. No body. No face. Just floating eyes. I didn't scream. Couldn't. I stared back, paralyzed, until they vanished. Then came the voice. "You let me in." I left the house at sunrise and waited at the park until my parents arrived that afternoon. I begged them to sell the house. They didn't. But a week later, the basement flooded. When the repairmen came, they tore open the old heating ducts to replace rusted pipes. They found a crawl space, and inside it a skeleton, curled in the vent shaft. A man, mid-40s, still dressed in what looked like an asylum gown. His fingers were broken. The vent gate above him had claw marks, scraped so deep they went through the metal. Police found records of a man who'd gone missing in 1953 after escaping a mental institution. He had been hiding in that house, had been sealed in when the homeowners blocked the crawl spaces, until someone turned the heater on again. We moved 6 months later. But I never sleep with the heater on, because every now and then, even in other houses, I swear I hear it again. The whisper, from deep inside the wall, "You'll never be alone again." It began with the mirror, a full-length antique, etched with curling vines and strange symbols around the frame. My mom bought it from an estate sale, the kind where everything feels like it carries someone else's unfinished business. She hung it in the upstairs hallway, just between my room and the bathroom. It looked out of place against the modern white paint, like it belonged somewhere forgotten. That week, my parents left for a cruise to celebrate their anniversary. I stayed behind because of exams. It wasn't my first time home alone, but it was my first time in that house, alone with the mirror. The first night, I passed it around 2 a.m., heading to the bathroom. I caught something in the reflection. Not my reflection. A shadow behind me, walking just a second out of sync. When I turned, The hall was empty. I laughed it off. Shadows play tricks. Old glass distorts. That's what I told myself. But the next night, the mirror was different. I passed by again, and this time my reflection didn't move. I stopped, stared, head slightly tilted. Its mouth curled into a grin I wasn't wearing. I stumbled back, heart hammering. The reflection blinked after I did. I didn't use the hallway after that. I stayed in my room, door closed tight. But things escalated quickly. On the third night, I woke to scratching sounds. Not like mice, fingernails on glass. I sat up and saw light spilling under my door. A soft, pulsing light like candle flame. I crept over, slowly opened the door. And the mirror was glowing. Faint blue light shimmered across its surface, like moonlight underwater. And in the reflection, the hallway looked wrong. It was still my hallway, but rotted, as if time had fast-forwarded. Walls cracked, floorboards warped and soaked. Mold crawled across the ceiling like veins. And something was in it. Not in the hallway, only in the mirror. A woman, tall, gaunt, with soaking wet hair hanging in clumps over her face. Her dress was tattered, her hands long and crooked like twigs. She walked slowly toward the surface of the glass. I slammed the door shut and stayed awake until morning. The mirror was normal when the sun came up. I searched online trying to make sense of it. Found stories about spirit mirrors, about using glass as gateways between worlds. None of it made me feel better. I tried covering it with a sheet. That night, something knocked on the sheet from the inside. The sound of bone tapping glass. Slow, rhythmic. I didn't open my door. I called my parents. They were halfway around the world and thought I was sleep-deprived. The fifth night, I found a note on the mirror frame, written in my handwriting. I hadn't written it. It said, "You're not real." I am. I stared at it for a long time. Then I looked at the mirror. My reflection stared back. It blinked once, slowly, deliberately, then began to mouth words I couldn't hear. I backed away. It raised its hand. I didn't. It started pounding on the glass, the reflection rattling like it was being shaken from the inside. Then came the crack. A long fracture split down the middle of the mirror. Behind it, I could see the hallway in the reflection now flooded with water, ankle deep. The woman stood just behind the fracture line, her eyes completely black. She lifted her hand and pressed it to the glass. Water leaked from the touch point, slowly running down onto my floor. I ran. I slept downstairs with the TV on all night. The next morning, the mirror was gone. The wall was bare. No cracks. No water. No note. I thought maybe I imagined it all. Until my parents returned. My mom asked why I took the mirror down. I told her I didn't. She thought I was joking. We searched the house. No sign of the mirror. But that night, when I brushed my teeth, the bathroom mirror flickered. Just for a second. And behind my reflection, I saw her, still soaking, still smiling. I shattered the mirror the next day. But every now and then, in any mirror, public restrooms, windows at night, I'll catch a glimpse. Not always clear, not always close, but she's still there, waiting for me to look long enough to let her back through.